Mara is a hero that can absolutely carry a dungeon group if played well. In this video, I'll go over a few different tips and tricks to help level up your Mara gameplay and why I think she's extremely powerful in the right hands. This will primarily be catered towards players still working through the Challenger Leagues, but the principles still apply at every stage of the game. Several of these tips and tricks also build off of each other, where by the end you should see the full picture on exactly what gives Mara the ability to carry a group. The first thing about Mara is she's extremely good at interrupting priority targets. She of course has her interrupt, which is on a 16-second cooldown, but she also has a single target stun on a 30-second cooldown. This means Mara can single-handedly deal with some priority interrupts in a pull by interrupting one target that casts and then stunning another target's cast. My tip here is that the best way to handle this is to mark a kick target, and then your priority target should be one that you want to interrupt with your stun and also focus down with damage. Then to add on to this concept, Mara typically runs the Faded Dagger weapon, which reduces cooldowns. This normally doesn't really line up well in AoE situations to be super meaningful, but there are some points where Faded Strike is able to reduce your stun down to a 15-second cooldown and basically reset your actual interrupt, giving Mara close to 4 interrupts in a single pull. On certain bosses though, this is actually pretty effective, thinking about like the Stormwatch boss and how you can get extra kicks off in that fight. Overall though, seriously, Mara has some insane control. My second tip is something that I've already covered in other videos, but Mara has a lot of priority damage in her builds. This priority damage comes in the form of Hemotoxin if you're playing the Bleed Hemotoxin build, and then Malevolence comes with built-in priority damage basically just because you're required to use Queen's Fang in AoE. But regardless of the build you're playing, you want to make sure that you're focusing your priority damage into the correct targets. For example, if there are multiple high priority casters, make sure that you're trying to focus your priority damage on at least one of these casters to reduce the amount of deadly casts going out on the group. My third tip for you is regarding energy management. Regardless of the build you're playing, energy is the most important resource to manage on Mara, but energy maintenance comes in different forms depending on the build you're playing. Seething Poison is the exception here in that it's a top priority buff that you want to manage on Mara regardless of the build you're playing, simply because a 40% buff to all energy generation is very powerful and you need to maintain this buff as close to 100% uptime as possible. Usually in AoE situations, I like to apply this on a target with the highest HP, but sometimes if that high HP target is also a priority target and it'll get focused down first, then I will throw Seething Poison on a lesser important target that I know might survive until the end of an encounter. One example of these lesser important targets are Pillagers that you can find in like Stormwatch, simply because they get a stacking health buff whenever things die around them, so they have a little bit more surprising longevity than you might expect. For Bleed build, your energy management comes in the form of Hemorrhaging Strikes. At the start of a pull, if you spread as many bleeds as possible during your maiden window while you're running the Gushing Blood talent, you can spread bleeds on almost every single target, which will provide a massive boost to your energy supplies. So make sure you're always maintaining Hemorrhaging Strikes even if the pull is only halfway through. For Finisher build, energy is a bit more challenging to maintain. You rely very heavily on Venomous Delight to manage your energy in combination with Widow's Bite. But due to Widow's Bite having cooldowns and Venomous Delight being a random effect, you might run into dry spells where you're running low on energy. In AoE, you can supplement this by trying to manage a very high uptime on your Skittering Blades poison effect when you're using it from stealth. This AoE poison effect will trigger higher amounts of Venomous Delight, giving you an increased energy regen. Corrosive Spill, once you unlock that for Finisher build around the 10 or 11 talent point mark, that also allows you to gain bursts of energy, but again, Corrosive Spill is a random proc. Single target will require smart use of your Widow's Bites in order to maintain your energy, but sometimes you will also just kind of need to wait and let your energy naturally refill by skipping a couple global cooldowns. Once you acquire legendary boots, energy supplies become much more trivial since the boots are poison damage and that also feeds into Venomous Delight. Basically, Venomous Delight is one of Finisher build's best talents and you should be using it in every single situation. Moving on to the fourth item here, that is that spirit abilities or ultimates are the peak damage output of every character. Mara is no different here. player, but when you're playing finisher build, you'll especially want to plan around your ultimate. This is because Mara's ultimate while playing the finisher build is one of the strongest bursts in the entire game. You definitely want to let your tank know the status of your ultimate, which you can do quickly by pressing the Alt plus left clicking your spirit ability, and this will automatically send a message in party chat with the status of your ultimate. When your ultimate is ready, hopefully your tank understands their role and pulls a little bit larger of a pack. That being said, if your tank isn't quite pulling as big, you still don't want to hold your ultimate for too long. Every adventure will give you 2 ultimates minimum. You want to use the first ultimate on a trash pack to help speed up the clearing process, and then the second ultimate will come up during the final boss fight. In dungeons, you get access to more than 2, so you just kind of want to plan them around the pulls and bosses as you progress through those dungeons. Because the ultimates are such big bursts of damage, you don't want to hold on to them for too long because you might possibly lose out on an entire ultimate usage, and that really cuts down on your overall damage that you could have been doing. So basically, once you do get your ultimate, you should look to use it on the next possible pack or save it for the scariest pack. The next tip that I have kind of ties everything together, and that's the usage of Final Stratagem. This cooldown is odd. It's not really the most intuitive to use. This cooldown refreshes all of Mara's heroes abilities, which that means it excludes relics, weapons, and ultimates. You would think that a cooldown refresh is very strong, but it's really not. The top priority use for Final Stratagem is to use it during an ultimate window where you can refresh your Maiden of Death, giving you 2 Maiden of Death uses throughout your entire ultimate. This just helps further amplify your burst damage. Otherwise, the use of Final Stratagem is kind of up to you and the situation you're in. If you need emergency interrupts, you can interrupt one target, stun another, use Final Stratagem, and be ready to repeat your stun and interrupt. This gives Mara even more control and can absolutely save a bad pull if you're timing out your cooldowns well. Final Stratagem also refreshes combo points and energy to max, meaning you can use it as a sort of way to get an instant finisher, which is admittedly probably Final Stratagem's weakest use. However, fully recharging your energy can be extremely powerful for getting you out of a very bad energy state. So ultimately, Final Stratagem can function as a bit of a get out of jail free card. Don't be afraid to use this ability for any reason. Resetting your crowd control, offensive cooldowns, or resetting energy, they all have their purpose. My final tip or piece of advice is regarding mobility. Shadow Step instantly teleports Mara to a target, including allies or enemies, but it always requires a target to use. If you wanted to teleport to an ally very quickly, for example, to avoid some damage last second, you have to either first find your ally to click on them and then teleport, or you have to click on their unit frame and teleport them. But then you have to also target back to the target you're trying to focus on. Either way, it feels a bit unintuitive sometimes. However, in your UI, you can enable hover casting for very specific abilities. This will make it so you no longer have to target an ally to jump to them, and instead you just have to hold your mouse over the unit frame of your ally, and that will cause you to shadow step to them. To do this, simply right click on your shadow step ability in your action bar, and there should be an option for hovercast. Check the box and you should be good to go. Note that if your cursor isn't over a valid target to teleport to, then you will still teleport to your currently selected target. But that's going to wrap up these few tips and tricks for Mara and how I think she's able to carry a group. If these tips helped you, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel for more Mara and Fellowship content in the near future. But this was Goober Troy, thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a great day.